At the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, our philanthropic advisors are certified in 2164, which helps donors engage in next-gen philanthropy. Joining me today is Chris to share how she and her family have made giving a big part of their life. Welcome, Chris. How would you describe your family's tradition around giving?
My family has a great tradition of giving, and it really, I think, has been brought into focus by my parents. So there are 9 grandchildren in our family, and my parents started a tradition several years ago where they would ask each grandchild to come up with a nonprofit that they would like to donate to. And then my parents would make a donation on their behalf to that nonprofit. And not only that, as grandparents often do, my parents would say, why did you pick that nonprofit? And the kids could never get away with kind of just shrugging and saying, I don't know. So it really kind of forced them to articulate, what's important to them and, what they care about. So the other part of that tradition is not only do they ask the grandkids to pick a nonprofit, but rather than just mailing the check, they actually take the kids to the organization offices and they'll meet the founder or the executive director, or maybe the lone staff person, or maybe the team. That interaction, really, I think, drives home the mission of the organization and brings to light the people who are doing, such amazing work. And it's really been inspiring for the kids, becoming aware of what's going on in the community and developing empathy for others, and then taking all of those and then putting them into action by giving. I think another great tradition that our family started is around the holidays. We've decided that, the adults don't really need to exchange gifts. And so we came up with this great tradition of we're all going to donate a set amount to a nonprofit in lieu of giving each other gifts. And then we take turns, so each family member gets to choose and do research on the nonprofit. I learned about my cousin who is majoring in biology, and his concern for marine wildlife and how they're going to fare in climate change. And so he picked a nonprofit that we all donated to. But I don't know that I ever would have learned that about him if we didn't have this tradition.
Chris, you have your donor advice fund here with the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation. How have we helped you with your family's philanthropy?
My husband and I set that up at a time in our lives where we, did not have a lot of extra money to give. And when we did have money, we weren't sure where, to give to. And so the idea of setting aside a fund with the foundation, it's a way for us to set it aside and to be more thoughtful and to be more intentional, I guess, and planful in our giving. Just the value of that is, has meant a lot to our family. And the ability to pass that on, after my husband and I are gone, to our children. And then they know that money is there for them to be able to give to things that are important to them, is just really beneficial. The other thing that, I so appreciated with our, being connected through our fund is you're always so great about coming up with a list of organizations that might resonate with the kids and the things that they're interested in. So my daughter, Stephanie, chose one of the organizations off of your list, Ampersand Families, which is about, teen adoption. And that's what she chose with my parents. So she went with my parents to give the check to the executive director, and they sat down and talked about the organization. And then when Stephanie came home, we sat down at the kitchen table, and I kind of asked her, how was it? And I think we talked for longer than their actual meeting at the nonprofit, because she was just so moved by what Michelle, the executive director, talked about. And, just seeing Stephanie be so inspired by that really moved me then to talk more with her about it. And then I in turn recommended Ampersand Families to a giving circle that I'm part of, the Power of 100 Women's Giving Circle. And they actually, Ampersand Families then got a grant from Power 100. And then in the process of putting together that nomination and learning more about Ampersand Families, I became friends with Michelle, the executive director, who is now a member of our giving circle. So, I mean, that just goes to show you how, a conversation and a tradition that started from my parents to my daughter, then went to me, and then, has reached back to the nonprofit that we knew nothing about before this all started.
I love that. That is such a beautiful story. Besides the ampersand grant, what is the other most meaningful gift that you've ever made?
My grandparents on my father's side were migrant farmers in California, and they just had this love of gardening. When they passed away, I received some money, and I really wanted to make a donation that would honor them and their lives. And at that time, the Como Conservatory was looking for funding for their bonsai collection, their bonsai garden. And I thought, you know what? A beautiful way to not only honor my grandparents who are Japanese, but to also lift up their love of gardening and flowers and trees and that kind of thing. So I donated the money that I received from them to the bonsai collection at the Como Conservatory.
Who or what makes you feel grateful?
I am constantly amazed and grateful for just the thousands of organizations and millions of people who are rolling up their sleeves and doing great work to tackle some, really large issues and challenges that our community faces, and then also, small ones. I wish I had the energy and the wherewithal to be able to do, some of this great work. I don't. And so I'm forever grateful for those who are taking on these challenges and, making a difference in our community. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to be able to support some of them.
Chris, thanks for taking the time to speak with us and share wonderful stories about your family's philanthropy and how the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation can be part of it.
Thanks, Mala. It's been really great talking with you. And, we so appreciate the support that we've received from you as our donor advisor, as well as the great work that the St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation do. So looking forward to brighter days ahead and continued giving.